Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar on the CODESYS Automation Server. Today, together with my colleague Roland Wagner, who will take care of the moderation part and also the chat, I'll guide you through the webinar benefits and insights, CODESYS Automation Server, the Industry 4.0 platform for professional automation. First, I will talk about the initial situation from which the necessity for a platform like the CODESYS Automation Server arose. I'll introduce you to the basics of the CODESYS Automation Server, show you some first steps you have to undertake if you want to use the Automation Server. And in section 4, I'll show you some live demonstration of specific use cases with the CODESYS Automation Server. And in the end, we'll come to a short outlook and a conclusion of what we've heard so far. So let's start right ahead with the initial situation. If we take a look to the industry, for example, in factory automation, there are different machines performing different tasks, having to control different things. So if we take a closer look, for example, to an assembly line in a machine hall, assembling cars or parts of cars, all these different tasks have to be somehow controlled. And of course, where control is necessary, there have to be controllers. If we take a look to another industry, so for example, to a chemical plant where we have different raw materials and different processes, these processes also have to be controlled by some kind of controllers. Or even more, let's say, unspecific, because we can find it everywhere, building automation, not only in industry, but also in our private homes. For example, if there is an automated lighting system or ventilation, shading, air conditioning, maybe even access control in a building, there's the necessity of controllers in those infrastructures. Or if we go from the buildings to the outside, so for example, in mobile industry, or how we can see here in energy automation, these windmills will have to be controlled also, for example, for gust detection. So controllers are necessary here too. And what all these before mentioned applications have in common is that you most probably might find these controllers in control cabinets. So the question now is, if we have so many controllers in all these different devices and machines, how can we keep track of these controllers, especially if we have a look at the worldwide interconnectedness between controllers, between factory plants, between locations of industries. So if we imagine all of these little red dots is one controller, and all these controllers come along with different projects, applications running on the controller. And of course, each controller has its unique parameter set depending on the application it's performing. And there are a couple of users programming the PLCs, taking care of them. And all these PLCs now are getting more and more interconnected in the age of Industry 4.0 and Industrial Internet of Things. By time, you have different project versions because of the development of the project. You have backups of your projects, of your applications, of your parameter sets. You have new firmware versions, updates on your PLCs. And of course, need some security certificates for the communication over the internet. So again, the problem in every industry is how can we administrate such a controller landscape, especially regarding the interconnectedness between all these controllers, which will grow in the future. So to find an answer, let's look at how we could describe networks and how we could look at a controller landscape in our days. All of you might know the situation at home. One normally uses a commercial network technology. This might look a bit like this. You have an internet connection secured by a firewall. You have a router and a separate Wi-Fi access point or a combined device, and you can access it by a tablet or by your laptop or by any end device, so smartphone and so on. So that's what's going on in private environment. If you go from your flat, from your house to the office, and you take a look at the infrastructure there, it's the same picture like in your houses, but a bit more complex. So you surely have at least one or a couple of servers running there, and you have different clients accessing all these servers. you have network printers, you have telephones in the network, so it's a bit more complex. In the industrial sector, it's even more complex because all the controls and all the machines have to be connected with each other if it's necessary. And for this purpose, there's also an IT infrastructure that gets used. From this starting point, a couple of problems arise. If we're using an IT infrastructure to interconnect the controllers, who should take care of the administration? Is it the IT department who should take care of the IT infrastructure and also the controllers? Probably it's not their job to care for the controllers. But on the other hand, is it the task of PLC specialists to take care of the administration of the IT infrastructure? Maybe the controllers, but surely not the IT infrastructure, especially regarding the interconnectedness in Industry 4.0, which is constantly growing. That's why CODESYS thought about a solution, and we came up with the idea of a server for automation technology, and the server will take over all the tasks that have usually been done by the IT department and by the PLC specialists. The server is called CODESYS Automation Server. With this product, there's a third big pillar in the product portfolio of the CODESYS Group. So the first big pillar is the runtime systems for PLCs. The second pillar, which already exists, is the engineering pillar with the CODESYS Development System, for example, or the Professional Developer Edition. And now the third big pillar in the portfolio is the CODESYS Automation Server. Let's have a look at the basics, at some technical details. So the CODESYS Automation Server is hosted in the cloud. And as we're working together with one of the biggest cloud providers, we, together with the cloud provider, can assure a very high level of data security and also data protection. As the software of the CODESYS Automation Server runs as a software as a service for you, there are a couple of advantages you can immediately profit from. As we take care of the whole infrastructure, there's no need for you to invest in your own hardware, so your investment risk is very low. As you can use the service in a pay-per-use model, your costs are very transparent and you have very scalable costs coming with the CODESYS Automation Server. Along with this, of course, your IT process is less complex, so the complexity is reduced, and that's why you can better concentrate on your actual core business. And another big advantage is you don't have to take care of any updates because we'll take care of that. So there's no work for you. But now you might ask yourself the question, well, wait, Mr. Decker just said the automation server is running in the cloud. So if I want to connect my controllers to the automation server, is it necessary to have a single connection from each controller to the automation server running in the cloud? Well, and the answer, of course, is not. We're using a so-called edge gateway. I'll come to that later too. Now, just a couple of short notes on it. The CODESYS Edge Gateway is either a component of the CODESYS control runtime system running on the controllers, or it'll be available as a standalone installation either for your Windows or for your Linux devices. And the communication will be secured via TLS. In other words, instead of this topology with a connection between each controller and the cloud, you can now use a dedicated controller which has the CODESYS Edge Gateway already on board and acts like a door between worlds. So the bottom world is your controller landscape and the top world is the cloud with the CODESYS Automation Server, and the communication between your controller landscape and the automation server is done by the CODESYS Edge Gateway on the middle device. It can also be part of a device that is already in your controller network, or as I already mentioned, it can also be on a PC running with Linux or on a device running with Windows. Apart from that, there are two administrative levels for the CODESYS Automation Server. There is one commercial level where you can take care of the administration of your tenant, which is something like your client or your user account. And this is done via the CODESYS Store. I'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. And On another level, you can keep track of the administration of your controller landscape, and this takes place in the web app, which can be accessed by any browser, not only on computers, but also, for example, on tablets or smartphones. In the first step, I show you how you can set up your initial tenant for your first usage of the CODESYS Automation Server. If you go to the CODESYS store at store.codesys.com, there's a separate tab saying Automation Server, and if you click on that tab, there are 3 products. The uppermost one is the CODESYS Automation Server, which currently still runs in a beta version until end of next month. And if you choose this product, CODESYS Automation Server, you'll be directed to a page where you can enter your host name. So in this case, I chose webinar. This host name will later also be part of the URL of your automation server tenant. If you confirm the name, it'll take some seconds and you'll get a confirmation email containing a link for setting up an initial administration. If you click on that link in your email, your browser will open with a page consisting of 2 steps. So first step is now you have to enter an email address for your initial administrator account, and you have to enter a password also regarding our password policy. If you submit these credentials, you'll get a confirmation link saying initial administrator account was created, and you can now click on that link and your browser opens up. So I already entered the login credentials here, log in to the automation server, and now we can immediately start playing. So we could have a look, well, here, and yeah, we see it's all empty. So it's not a surprise, everything is empty because we haven't done any configuration yet. So let's undertake some first steps so we can play with the CODESYS Automation Server and really make use of it. For using the CODESYS Automation Server, there are 2 more products in the CODESYS store which are necessary. First, it's the Automation Server Connector, which enables your CODESYS Development System to communicate with the CODESYS Automation Server in the cloud. Second, I already mentioned it, it's the CODESYS Edge Gateway, which is the door between worlds. For installing the Automation Server Connector, you can use the package manager of your CODESYS Development System, and after you've performed the installation, you'll see a new entry saying CODESYS Automation Server Connector, and furthermore, the Automation Server Connector gives you a new entry in the main menu saying Automation Server and giving you a choice of different commands you can perform in this menu. The CODESYS Edge Gateway currently, in the beta version, is a standalone installation for Windows. So if you have done the installation, in the info part of your taskbar, you'll see the icon you already know running in the sys tray, and it will say version 3.5.15.0 if you install the current version. In the future, it's scheduled for patch 1 of Service Pack 15. It will be a component of each CODESYS control runtime system, so also soft PLCs. And it will be part of the CODESYS development installation, also scheduled for patch 1 of Service Pack 15. And there will be a standalone installation for Linux devices too. You've seen now how you can install the Automation Server Connector plugin and how it looks like when the CODESYS Edge Gateway is installed. In the next few steps, I'll show you how you can do the configuration of the Edge Gateway, which is done in the CODESYS Development System. And in some more steps, I'll show you how you can configure the Edge Gateway, how you can select it in the web app, so in the browser, how you can scan for controllers in your network, how you can actually add these controllers to your list, how you can make use of their digital twin, and how you can set up your own topology views using your own photographs. For this purpose, I first go back to the browser and copy the URL of the CODESYS Automation Server, and I now go to an open CODESYS Development System. I've already mentioned this new menu entry here saying Automation Server, and I can now connect an Edge Gateway to an Automation Server. The server URL is the one I just copied to the clipboard. So here, the webinar part I entered in the CODESYS store before. I choose my local edge gateway. I just installed as a standalone installation. The address is localhost because it's on my workstation, and I test the connection, get a confirmation that the connection is okay, and I enter a name for it. So let's call it webinar, and the description, let's say it's local. I push the OK button, and now I have to enter my login credentials. I chose when setting up my initial administrator account. And I get a confirmation message that the Edge Gateway was added successfully. That's all I have to do in the CODESYS Development System so far. I can close it and go back to the browser. You remember, this page has been empty before, but now there is a new entry saying gateways, and there's the gateway I just configured saying webinar and the comment local. I can do a network scan now over this gateway. So I select the gateway, click on scan, and there are a couple of controllers because I'm in the company network, and you can imagine all my colleagues are working with some kind of controllers. So I prepared a couple of controllers for you. These are 1, 2, 3, and I can now add these to my CODESYS Automation Server tenant. I clicked Add on Server. I can see some details here, serial number. I can see the network address here, and I can add it to the server. I immediately see the current state of my PLC, which is green. That means everything is running fine. And now add 2 more controllers. So number 2 and number 3. If I click on the details, I can already see a couple of informations of this digital twin of the controller. For example, I can see that it's running not with the current runtime, but with the last one, service pick 14, patch 3. I can see the serial number here, can see the gateway which it uses, and I can also go to the configuration tab, and that's the interesting part here. I can check these boxes and allow the synchronization of applications and also parameters. We'll see later what this is good for. I'll check these boxes too for the other 2 controllers I added. And I'll now have the possibility to tag my controllers. That's important for the topology view, for example, and also if you want to make groups of PLCs. So I can enter the tag demonstrator here. I just copy that one, confirm it, do the same for the other controller, demonstrator, and for this one. And now I show you how you can create your own topology views. Because in the list view, there's a good overview, but in the topology view, you can add your own images. Let's call this one map. You will see a world map in this topology view. I choose an image. Let's choose that one. And I go to create the topology view. I can now edit the view, so I can remove the background color, and I can say I want to add some icons for PLCs here. I can simply drag and drop an icon here, and from a list of installed controllers that I've previously added to my tenant, so you've seen I added these 3, I can select one, and I can save it. If I click on this icon, I can immediately go to the detailed view of this controller. To make it a bit more concrete, I create a new topology view. Well, let's call it demonstrator. And I choose another image. It's a photo I've taken beforehand. It shows the demonstrator I'm working with. So what we can see here is actually 4 controllers. They're equipped with a LED matrix, and I can edit this now too. I can say this is PLC 1. This is PLC number 2. This is PLC number 3. And furthermore, I have the possibility to make a group of controllers. That's why the tags were important. So all these controllers now belong to the group demonstrator. And I can also add a switch to another topology. So in this case, there is only one other topology available, which is the map one. Save it. And if I want to have a look at the group now, I can simply choose this icon. It says it's the demonstrator group. And I can now filter my list by all the PLCs that are member of this group, which is the PLCs I tag with this group tag. Let's go back to the presentation. You've seen these points now, and now we'll come to some more interesting parts and parts you can really make use of when you're using the CODESYS Automation Server. You've already seen details of the digital twin and how to create your own topology view and how to navigate in the list view. In the next few steps, I show you how you can upload your project from your local machine to the CODESYS Automation Server and also upload the boot application to deploy it on the controllers later, how you can change project parameters, or variables, and how you can make changes to the project and the according boot application. And in the end, I show you a replacement of a controller that broke down by using the CODESYS Automation Server's ticket system. For this purpose, I'll switch to another CODESYS, which already has a project opened, project that shall run later on my controllers. And for you, hope you can see it. So there's a live stream. There's a little time delay of a couple of seconds here. And you can see the demonstrator you've seen the picture of in the topology view. And you can see the 4 PLCs here. As you can see, these LED displays are dark at the moment. And what I'll do now is I'll upload the project to the CODESYS Automation Server. Go to this menu saying Automation Server, and then I say Connect to Automation Server. I already tried this out a couple of times before, so I simply select the URL of the Automation Server I want to upload it, enter a commit message, so let's call it first upload, press the OK button, and now I can see here what's uploaded. Mainly it's the project archive and the corresponding application, which is later deployed on the controller. I have to enter my login credentials again. Send all the data to the automation server. It takes a while. Of course, depending on the size of your project. And now everything is done. No errors. We can close the CODESYS Development System as we do not need it anymore and switch to the browser. If I go to the menu Applications to Projects, I can now see my project called Chromatic has been uploaded 10/26. And if I go to the details, I can also see my commit message. And in this tab Applications, I can now see the corresponding applications that came along with my project. If I go to the application details, I can see the application or the device in the application is a CODESYS Control Raspberry Multicore, and it runs with the same runtime version like my actual controllers. In the second tab, I can have a look at which controllers it is currently deployed on, none. And here on the Deploy tab, I can now deploy the application on my controllers. So I select those 3 or select all. And now I make this a bit larger. I go deploy on selected PLCs. It'll going to take a couple of seconds now, and then you'll see on these 3 PLCs, the screen will change from dark to an application, which is some black-white running light on these displays. I can now see in the list view that there's also a project connected with these controllers, and in the application details, I can now see that the application is deployed on these controllers. I also have the possibility, if I go to list view and to details, and if I go to the parameter tab here, to change them parameters that are part of my project. I'll come back to that later. So I've uploaded a project now, and the application is running on the controllers. That's fine. Let's say a colleague has done this a couple of weeks ago, and now I see the controller and the application running on the controller, and I recognize something is missing or there still is an error in the code. So what can I do now? I don't have access to the application. I don't have access to the project normally. But with the CODESYS Automation Server, there's also a repository for those projects and according applications. So I'm using the same account, maybe with another user right management for the automation server, and I can now go to projects and to the details of the project, and I now just close the live stream, go to this open with CODESYS. I get a prompt if I really want to open it with the CODESYS Development System, and what happens now in the next step is the CODESYS Development System is opened, and a copy of the project is locally stored on my device, and I can make changes to the code now. So my CODESYS opens up. I have to enter the login credentials here again. Confirm it, enter another project name if I want. So let's call that one just server, storage location. I see which project I can download now. So the one I just, or actually my colleague just uploaded, download the project. It's downloading now all components that have been stored in the project archive. So also my soft motion profile. I do not want to override that one. And in the next step, I can see that the project my colleague just uploaded a couple of weeks ago to the CODESYS Automation Server now is open here in my local installation of the CODESYS Development System. I can now perform the changes or correct the errors. So one that was wrong is here the initial value of this Boolean X color, which should be true. You see the effect of this later. And also there's a symbol configuration here. In the parameter set in the CODESYS Automation Server, I've seen there was only one parameter available, but I want to have a switch for the X color here too. So I've done all changes now. Go to the menu again, Automation Server, synchronize. And I say I changed the code. Submit it to the CODESYS Automation Server. And now this new project version and its according application gets uploaded to the repository on the CODESYS Automation Server. I don't need this anymore, so I close the CODESYS Development System. And if I go to projects, I can see there was a second upload with this commit message, changed code. And also in the applications, I can see this indicator color changed from green when it was deployed on the PLCs to blue, meaning there is another updated version of the application available. So I can see this application is currently not deployed on any controller, but I can do an update on the controllers. So I choose the latest versions and I say update all. Forgot to. So you see the application stops for a second. And in the next step, you see the new application running on the controllers with the new initial values. So that was the effect from changing the initial value for the Boolean from false to true. And if we now go to the list view of the controllers and have a look at the parameters, we can see that there are now 2 parameters available, and these were made available by just checking the boxes in the simple configuration of my project. So I can, for example, change the speed with this parameter here. Let's say confirm. So you see the speed change now, and I can try to change another parameter. Let's say controller 3. So if I enter false here and I didn't forget anything in the code before, there should be a color change from rainbow to black white because there was my color switch. So perfect, we're happy with that. But imagine you have a controller in one of your factories on site. You're the developer, you wrote the application, and you're located far away from where the controller actually runs. And now there's a breakdown of the controller. I'll simulate that breakdown by simply unplugging one of the controllers. So let's say I'll unplug that number 2 here. So it should get dark now. Yeah, right. So this controller broke down now. So the first thing the automation server is good for is we can go to the list view, and it takes a couple of seconds until the CODESYS Automation Server recognizes that the controller broke down. So in a couple of seconds, we'll see a change here. This indicator will turn from green to red, and meanwhile, I'll show you how we'll proceed. So you see it changed from green to red. And as I said, the controller is located on a location where you don't have any access to. But you know, there is a good service technician nearby. Wouldn't it be great if you could just send an email containing a service ticket to the service technician, and he can simply do the replacement of the old controller by a new one without the need of programming the application or deploying the application manually on that new controller. It's pretty easy with the ticket system of the automation server. So first you can add a service technician. So I call it webinar technician and I enter its email address. I already tried that before, that's why it's cached. CODESYS Automation Server service, it's very easy, at gmail.com. Well, no phone number for him, no remarks, maybe best technician. And skills, of course, he has all the skills we need, and he is currently available. So I create that technician now, and in the next step, going back to the list view, I can go to the details of the controller that broke down, and I can now choose Replace PLC. By pushing this button, I can create a ticket for the replacement of the PLC. There's some more information on the PLC that has to be replaced, and I can now enter a description of this ticket. Let's call it just new PLC. Select a service technician from my list of service technicians. As you've seen, there's just the webinar technician I just created. Create ticket. And the ticket overview now, I can see all the tickets and can also set different filters for complete tickets, rejected tickets, and so on. But currently, the checkbox is just marked for the active tickets, and I can now send the ticket to the service technician. The service technician is on site and he only has a smartphone or a tablet, nothing more. For this, I'll open another window which mirrors the screen of the service technician's tablet. On his tablet, he only had an email app, in this case Gmail, because he's using Gmail. The service technician now opens his app, and you can see the inbox does not contain any new messages, only an old one. If I send this email now, get a prompt, do you really want to send the ticket to the service technician? I say send email. You'll see there's a new email now in the tablet. the service technician can on-site open the email. The email contains a ticket URL. If the service technician pushes on the ticket URL, a browser opens up asking, do you want to allow access to the camera? So the service technician confirms it, and we can see a camera image. In the right top corner on the video, on the live stream, on the demonstrator, you can see the fourth PLC that has not been in use yet. That's the replacement PLC I already prepared. On site, that means there is a replacement PLC on stock, and the serial number of the PLC is either printed on the controller itself or somewhere in the documentation or on the boxing of the controller. So the only thing the service technician now has to do is to enter the serial number of the replacement PLC here, either manually, or he can also scan a QR code. I'll do that now, scan the QR code of the controller I'm using, and you can see the QR code was added here automatically, and the service technician can now simply hit this submit button, and in the next step gets a confirmation message, PLC successfully put into operation. If we take a look now at our demonstrator here, it'll take some seconds again, and you see the same application with the same parameter setting that ran on the old controller that just broke down a couple of minutes before, now runs on the new controller. And I just want to mention that again, the service technician, there was no necessity for him to have a CODESYS development system installed or to do some kind of programming or handling with the application or the project. I only sent him a ticket. He opened the ticket, built in the new controller, committed the ticket, and the rest was done by the CODESYS Automation Server. The new application is running perfectly on the replacement PLC now. I close that screen again. We don't need the live stream too. And we can now see in the list view that there's a new controller with the commit message I entered, having the same name, but of course a different serial number, but the same project is running on it, and I could now remove that controller. Perfect. So this was part of the live demonstration. You've seen how projects can be uploaded very easily, how project parameters can be changed, how it works in the CODESYS Development System to do changes and also to set parameters available for the CODESYS Automation Server by using the simple configuration. And you've seen the very impressive and easy ticket system for replacements of controllers. This ticket system can also be used for application templates for the initial deployment of an application on a new controller. It's analog to the ticket system. That's why I haven't showed that separately to you. Let's come to an outlook and to a conclusion. What you've seen so far were mainly parts of 3 fields of application the CODESYS Automation Server is for. The device manager of the CODESYS Automation Server is for the administrative part of your controller landscape. Furthermore, you have seen engineering parts, which is the CODESYS creator part of the Automation Server. So engineering, for example, the application repository or changing code or changing parameters. And what's not implemented yet in this beta version now, but what will come in the near future, is a functionality for storing and analyzing data, for example, for predictive maintenance. As I mentioned, the CODESYS Automation Server currently runs in a beta version. The Automation Server software is hosted in the cloud, and the servers now we're using are currently located in Germany. In the future, there'll be more regions available depending on which national law you underlie. There will be regions you can choose from where you want your data to be stored, where you want the servers where your data is stored to be located. For example, somewhere in Europe, Canada, and the United States, or in China, in Australia, in Africa. You'll have the choice to choose where your data goes and where it is stored. I already mentioned it as an advantage before, the pay-per-use model. The pricing for the CODESYS Automation Server will be as follows. There will be a basic monthly fee for your CODESYS Automation Server tenant, which already contains a number of controllers you can connect to the CODESYS Automation Server, a certain amount of traffic you can generate or use, and big amount of storage volume. On top of this, you can book additional services, which are paid per use then. For example, you can add additional PLCs, you can book more storage volume. So it's really tailored to your needs, and you can decide by yourself what you want to use and thus decide how much you want to pay, and you can also set limits. Furthermore, in the future, you'll have the chance also to embed third-party services in the CODESYS Automation Server, which then also are paid by unit or by call or by time, depending, of course, on the service. All these services are built monthly. That means you have full flexibility to use whatever you want, tailored to your needs. I already mentioned the commercial part where you can control your costs in your CODESYS store account. That's a screenshot of my CODESYS store account a couple of days ago. And as you can see here, I currently have had three tenants running. So production line 1, 2, and the test lab. And on a first view, you can see the state of your CODESYS Automation Server. So if your tenant currently is stopped, if it's in maintenance, or if it's running. If you click on the details, you can see on your dashboard the current state of your automation server and also the limits you have set. So for example, set a limit for your balance that should not be exceeded, and you can see how much of this limit has already been reached. You can see the state of your traffic, of the storage volume, and also of the number of PLCs you're using. That means, again, you can perfectly keep track of the costs and of the limits of your automation server tenant. Concerning the roadmap and the infrastructure of the CODESYS Automation Server, we're currently here in September 2019. We'll soon release with patch 1. I already mentioned that a new gateway version for the CODESYS Automation Server. And last month, we released the version 1.3 of the automation server, and with the end of the evaluation phase, at the end of October 2019, we'll on the one hand release version 1.5 of the automation server for the productive use of the automation server, and there will also be a store add-on, so that means you don't have to handle all these three single components in the store now separately, but there'll be one add-on. Concerning the features of the CODESYS Automation Server, today in the webinar, you could already see some of the features. For example, the management of PLCs. You've seen how to create your own topology views with your own photos and set icons there and jump between different views. You could see how projects can be synchronized, how parameters can be set using the simple configuration and can be changed in the web application in the browser. How you can update applications and projects, how they're stored, backed up. The web app you've seen in the browser, you've seen the very impressive ticket system. I just mentioned that one, the project templates that are also available already. So with the end of October 2019, there'll be a dedicated user management with at least 5 different user levels, granting different rights for the users. So from administrator to watch only. And in the near future, from the beginning of next year on, there'll be more and more features coming subsequently, for example, JIT repositories or the capability of the automation server to really record and analyze data to your needs. There'll be the possibility to do firmware updates for your SL runtimes running on your controllers, so you're always up to date, and the automation server takes care of this. You can bring your own device. We're also working on apps for different devices with Android and iOS. And there will also be, for the engineering part, a continuous integration functionality, which is implemented in the CODESYS Automation Server. I hope as we're approaching the end of the webinar now, I could give you an impression of what the CODESYS Automation Server is good for and why the necessity really consists to make use of such a platform for administrating your controller landscape, a platform to handle engineering tasks of different controllers, engineering of different applications with different developers, a platform for data storage and analysis. I mentioned the constantly growing functionality. So what you've seen today is only a small part. You can still, until the end of October, check out in the free evaluation phase. So you're cordially invited to it. And of course, the benefits for you as automation specialists, namely the low investment risk, as you don't have to set up your own hardware, the scalable and transparent costs, the reduced complexity of the whole IT processes, your concentration on your actual core businesses, and the up-to-dateness which we take care of. And of course, as you've seen in the webinar today, the easy setup with only a few clicks, it can be used. I cordially invite you to take part at the evaluation phase. Just go to the CODESYS store, create your own tenant, and get yourself an impression of the CODESYS Automation Server. That's it so far from my side. I thank you very much for your attention. We'll still be available after the webinar in the chat if you have some more questions. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.